All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Vervoe webinar. It's 10 a.m. here in Paradise. It's 8 p.m. in New York, where we hope people are doing a bit better after the floods. 5 in the afternoon in California, and people would probably be, if you're in Europe, then we assume you're in bed, but you can catch the recording afterwards. This is number 5 in our series on the skills shortage. We did candidate experience, employer branding, screening people in, not out, and then employee onboarding. And today we're going to be talking about talent pools. And our expert panelist today is Kate Tzavara from Kellogg's. Yes, Kellogg's, the company that we all know that helps us with breakfast, and 30,000 employees globally, but 400 to 500 in Australia, where Kate works, and Kate focuses on end-to-end recruitment for everything except, tell me if I got this right, Kate, everything except the sort of the blue collar roles. And really excited to have Kate here talk to us about talent pools. Kate, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So Kate, let's start off with just a bit of kind of level setting. So talent pools, what are they and why do we want one?
Well, I think definitely from a sourcing perspective, a talent pool is really valuable when it comes to, particularly to time to hire, because it can be a pool of qualified or interested candidates that when a new vacancy comes up, that you would dip into to have a look, see if you've got someone that meets the criteria, and take it from there, rather than going through what can be quite a long sourcing process.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, these are people who are you don't have to sort of start from the process from scratch. They're people who we have some level of familiarity with. So let's just unpack that. So when you say qualified, what does that mean? How do we know that they're qualified?
It could be that, in a lot of situations, they could be a silver medalist. So someone that has been through a selection process for a particular vacancy and just missed out. It could be someone, and it depends on the maturity of your talent acquisition process, but it could be someone that's come through a talent community, part of your, one of your talent acquisition team members might have had a really detailed conversation with them, or it could be just someone that's interested, a part of your community that's interested in upcoming opportunities and wants to be considered when the right opportunity becomes available.
Okay, so I've got a bunch of questions on what you said now. Let's start with the concept of, and I love the sort of silver medalist term because we just had the Olympics. So the silver medalist concept is really interesting because, and maybe this is just how I think about it, but from a lens of a candidate, you applied for a job, but you didn't get it. So, presumably you're disappointed. And so how do we leave those candidates with a feeling that, they want to come back to the company rather than having bad taste? How does that work?
I think it's, you mentioned one of the sessions that you had previously was around candidate experience. So I think that that's always really important that, from the beginning of a process, that candidate has been engaged and sort of bought into your brand, and that you're very clear when they're going through that process that, it is competitive. There are other candidates that that the hiring manager is considering, and reiterate a lot of the positivities about why they would be a great fit for the organisation. Unfortunately, it wasn't this particular opportunity, but there are other opportunities that could potentially become available within the organisation, and it would be great to have a conversation when those opportunities become available.
Okay. Before we sort of get to the other, you mentioned sort of people that we've engaged with maybe in the form of a community. So not necessarily silver medalists, but just before we get to that, just one more question on the silver medalists. Can you give an example of, so someone applied for a role, 100 people applied for a role, let's say, and 99 of them didn't get it, and let's say in the next 3 to 6 months, what happens? What's the relationship with these people? Are we emailing them every day? Are we taking them out to dinner? What are they? Are they checking out the website? That kind of what does that look like in order to then help us tap them on the shoulder 3 to 6 months later and say, or are they just sitting in a database?
Yeah, I think it depends where you are at in your talent pooling journey as well. I think, in some organizations, they're sort of quite advanced and they're working with their marketing or employer brand team, and that those candidates might be getting, specific and targeted communications. Or in situations probably more like where I am right now, where we're not quite there just yet. But, like you said, I look after talent acquisition across ANZ. So I kind of represent the brand to these types of people. So for me, it's those regular sort of check-ins with them, and just a call or a message or an email, just talking through where they're at. With their job search, has there been any changes? Have there been any other roles that they're potentially considering? And just sort of updating them on the state of play within the business right now.
And are you doing that like literally? So are you doing that yourself, calling them and emailing them, or is it some sort of automated?
Yeah, no, I think that eventually when we have a fully integrated talent pool as part of our ATS, yeah, absolutely, it might be more integrated. But for me right now, there's probably in certain pockets of our business, I know that there's extreme talent shortages. So those would be the areas that I really do focus on to make sure that I'm managing those relationships and massaging them.
So some businesses would be larger or have roles that have a high volume. And one of the questions that's come up, thanks Leanne, was about casuals. Can you do this for casual? So let's just imagine that we're talking about now thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of people potentially in more casual roles. Can you still do that? Is it just a case of something more automated, but the same principle of kind of keeping in touch?
Yeah, I think so. I know that there's a lot of technology that can, go into keeping in contact and managing those sorts of talent pools. So I think if you're going to much larger scale, then absolutely, I think it's like a lot of us in talent acquisition or recruitment have come from agency background. That's all about making sure that you're keeping in touch with your pool of candidates or your database of candidates. So it's kind of a similar sort of a methodology, but obviously if you've got thousands of people, then you need to look at some sort of automation to maintain that contact and keep up to date with those people that you're wanting to.
I suppose it's not very different to any marketing where, people have, expressed some form of interest in a solution, but they're not ready to buy. So there are different proven methods to keep in touch, subscribe to the blog or check-ins, all these kind of things. So I suppose you could apply that to candidates as well. So, okay. So let's kind of switch to the other part, which is, not the silver medal. So people who've not applied for a job, but you might want them to apply, but maybe the role's not, we haven't gone live with the role, or they're not ready or whatever. And you talked about community is a word you mentioned. What are some of the other ways to build a talent pool, and how and why would we do that beyond people who've literally applied and not been successful for a role?
I think that it's really important to look at, obviously, from a succession planning point of view, or if there's, areas within your business that are poised for growth and that you're going to be needing particular skill sets. So it's really about, creating some sort of like a pool of candidates that you can go to. So I think it's really about identifying those candidates. and making some form of contact with them, and then making sure that, if it is a specific technical skill or area, then putting them in some sort of a database or community, and then making sure that you're keeping in contact with them in terms of relevant information, things that are happening within the business, just sort of drip feeding that information through on interesting facts about the business, and keeping them sort of engaged and enticed into and an inside sort of view on what a potential career with your business might be like. So okay, that sort of employer brand, feeding in that sort of information as well.
So I've got a few questions on that experience from the candidate perspective, but first I want to ask you about succession planning. So can you give an example of a situation or a role where you've sort of been through that and you've said, okay, this is an area that we're going to need to, hire into or replace. We don't have bench strength, or maybe this is a new area we're going to go into and we don't have internal people to staff that. And how do you think about that? Because I think that's an area that a lot of companies probably admittedly aren't great at. And it's very much hand to mouth, and the recruitment team, and it's no fault of typically of the recruitment team, they get told, oh, you need to go hire these 100 people and very short notice, as opposed to the organization thinking a year, 2 years. And in fairness, even organizations that want to plan, then a pandemic happens and all our needs change, right? So, I mean, I'd love to unpack a little bit the succession planning, and then we'll switch to what the experience is like if you're that person being talent pooled and what that feels like.
I think from a Kellogg's perspective, we have a really defined talent review process, and we look at succession. So employee X, and have we got someone ready to replace that, to replace them as they move to another opportunity within the organization, 1 to 2 years, 2 to 3, 3 to 5, and so we've got a that we can look at, and we could say, well, look, if so-and-so was to move into another opportunity, we've got an immediate gap. We might have someone ready in 2 to 4 years, but right now we don't have that bench strength. So we would need to go to the external market and start looking for suitable candidates. So that for me would be, excuse me, where I would start working on, creating some sort of pipeline or pool of candidates that I can start engaging with. And I think it's really important to get that hiring manager on that journey as well, because, I'm one person. There's so much that I can do, but it's also getting them to think quite holistically as well. Are they going to events, or what's their network looking like? Like, are there, people within their area of specialization that, we could filter into this pool as well? We can look at other ways of filling that pool via referrals and getting people within the team to start thinking about people that they might be able to refer, or it could be, alumni as well. Some people might leave an organization and build up some different skills that we can potentially bring back into the organization as well. So I think that's another important factor. So there's lots of different angles that you can take to create that pull, so that when it does come for that person to move into a different role, that you've built relationships with suitably qualified.
Okay, so that word relationship is a great segue to my next question. And you said referrals. So, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but presumably we're talking about succession plans. So there's no role now.
Yeah.
So what does a referral look like when there's no role right now?
Yeah, I think that is, I often get those sorts of situations where, there is someone that might be, it might be a friend or a former colleague that they are potentially considering an organization that'd be a great fit for Kellogg. So for me, it's about making that initial contact with them, and just sort of just explaining exactly that, explaining them a little bit more about the organisation, where the particular area fits into our structure, what sort of plans that we have for that, and then, you know, building that relationship from there.
So if I'm on the other side of this, so let's say that I'm not currently an employee of Kellogg's and I'm not ever applied for a job, but you've identified me as someone who, you know, could be relevant to the company at some point in the future. What does that look like? What happens? You know, to sort of people come to my house and say you've been selected, and you know you've got to go into a van now, and you know, what is it? Talk us through that experience, and also why would I sort of be interested in that? Why do I care? I've presumably got a job. So
yeah,
how does that work? I'm trying to get my head around that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely nothing as covert as vans arriving at your house. I think it is more about, you know, about that relationship and understanding a little bit more about, well, if it was that you were going to move or consider another opportunity, is it's understanding the motivations and the drivers of that particular individual as well. So it would be, you know, would be connection, sort of either virtually, sort of email messages, or sort of on the phone, but building up that understanding of what, you know, what does this person want from their career, and how can the opportunities at the organisation that you work for, how can it sort of, can it match up? So those motivations and those drivers and their career goals or aspirations, you know, is there an alignment there as well?
Okay, so the pitch is kind of, you know, introducing the company, talking about the potential opportunities in the future, and trying to align that with my goals, my career goals, and I might be able to see myself in the future in those roles. Is that sort of how it would work?
Yeah.
And it presumably doesn't feel, you know, some people are kind of, the initial reaction be, oh, I've got a job, you know, you're a recruiters, I don't want calling me, you know, people, especially now, people are getting sort of bombarded with. So is there a way to differentiate and do that in a way that doesn't feel like a headhunter's kind of sending you emails on LinkedIn and you just want to say no to that? Is there a way to make that feel more like, you said, relationship, building a relationship?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, obviously the people that you're trying to connect with, there would be synergies in terms of their background and experience. But I think it's more about sort of understanding a little bit more about them as well, and making sure that there is that alignment when it comes to drivers and motivations and things as well. You know, I don't want to, for me, you know, I want to make sure that I can offer someone a career with the organisation, rather than just, you know, if it's not. Yeah, if it's just I don't want it to be a short stint. I want it to be a meaningful career. So, you know, being honest, open, and transparent about, you know, the organisation and where it can go, and not sort of, you know, promising things that we can't deliver.
So let's talk about, let's go back into the company, because you touched on this point around like career, not just a transaction, not just a job. And you talked before about succession planning. You know, if you're not succession planning, is there also a risk to the existing employees that they don't see a career path? You know, is there an opportunity inside the company? Let me ask the question differently. Can you have a talent pool? Does the talent pool include the people inside the company as well, or is it just external? So how?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sorry, how do you navigate that?
Go ahead.
It is definitely, like, when we do the succession planning, it is all about who do we have in the team right now, and where is their next move, and what sort of time frame is it that we're looking at. And then it's obviously looking at their development and what are some of the skills and experiences that they need to build to get to a particular role. So absolutely, it's what do we need to do? Do we need to build, or do we need to buy that talent? And creating those development plans for those particular individuals that we want and they want to progress their career within the organization. So I think it's definitely it's looking at what talent do we have and what bench do we have within the business, but what do we need to bring in from an external viewpoint as well. So definitely internals are a big equation.
So you said build versus buy. Can you expand on how you think about that? Is it by role? Is it by department? Are there certain roles where you say this is an area that is harder to fill, and therefore we're going to do X? I mean, I know of an example where Australia Post looked at a tech academy for bringing people that want to work in tech but don't have a tech background and want to come in and sort of put them through a boot camp and teach them, and which is it's a concept that we like a lot. How do you make that determination on build versus buy?
I think it's I've seen a lot of organisations that have done something similar to Australia Post as well. I know where I worked previously with Deloitte, it was there were some areas that it was really challenging. So it was about building that talent. And for some of them, it was about, building programs where they could, people that might have been out of the workforce for a little while, building a program that will help them and getting the skills that they need to go into particular areas of the business. So I've worked across those types of programs as well. Another example that we had whilst working at Deloitte was, looking at, we needed to fill a funnel of suitably qualified candidates. And that filling that funnel was becoming increasingly hard because there were certain barriers to entry. So it was about sort of expanding that and looking at a different type of candidate and how we can, if they've got the baseline of experience, and how we can deliver development programs to get them to the level that we need them to be at as well. I think internally within Kellogg's, we have a range of different programs that might be around sort of technical capabilities and increasing individuals and teams' skills in that particular area. But it's also about, the softer skills. And if they're moving to a management position, putting them on those programs that will help them in giving them the opportunity to flex that and learn about that skill, as well as some sort of secondment or development opportunities within their current role to get them ready for that next step as well.
Okay, great. Weaving in more questions from the audience now, maybe we'll take two more. So one was around getting into the weeds a little bit around the process itself. So for example, we've now got to the point where we're trying to fill a vacancy. And working with a hiring manager, how do we incorporate the talent pool at that point? Do we just say to them, hey, there's a job ad up, here's the link, presumably there's something a bit more than that? How do we engage that talent pool versus just going external with a role?
Yeah, so I would always connect, and having done this for such a long time, there's always I don't know, I can always, there's always names or resumes or companies and that sort of thing that always sort of goes through my mind when it is that I'm briefing a role or I've spoken to someone that has this background. So it would always be about referring back to the pool, or depends how your ATS works. If you've got a folder of those candidates or whatever format that might be in, and then referring back to that and and refamiliarizing yourself with their background and the experience and the conversations that you might have had, and sort of connecting the two together and reaching out to them and say, look, you know, this opportunity's come up. I know we've spoken before, and you know, it was aligned to your level of skills and experience and where you're wanting to go. You know, the opportunities come about. Let's talk in a bit more detail.
And does that happen before you go live with the role, or is that concurrent? Is that happening in parallel?
It depends. Like it could go either way, really. I think you know, there's a process in getting the role sort of advertised and those sorts of things. I would probably go, you know, to those particular individuals initially and just have an initial conversation and explain that we are going to be going to the external market with this opportunity, but you know, wanted to chat with you prior to that to gauge your interest and, you know, timing wise, if that's going to work as well.
Okay. And I assume, and we touched on this earlier, that if it's at such a scale that, you know, you can't really be calling everyone individually, there'd be ways to kind of match the people who've expressed interest in this type of role. Okay, and so maybe just final question, and then we'll do a summary and wrap. This whole concept of talent pool, is this really just a big company game, enterprise? You know, do I need to be Kellogg's, or what if I'm a mid-sized shop with a few hundred, you know, employees, under 1,000? But good brand and people are expressing interest in, you know, is there a way to kind of do this at a you know, a bit of a scrappier way, you know, sort of with all the kind of
bells and whistles
and all the systems and the stack and everything?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, we have introduced success factors earlier this year. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles right now, but, you know, eventually we will build to a point where, you know, we can segment our pools into the different functions of our organizations and the locations and all that sort of thing. And that's going to be amazing. But right now, it's nowhere near that. So, and I don't think that, you know, talent pooling is just for large organizations. Talent and being able to access talent is important for all organizations. So I think that, you know, it depends on your business and what you can, you know, is there something that you can build or some sort of way, what's going to be the best way for you to be able to manage that and find a way to link back into the candidates that you wanted to access. So I definitely think, you know, it will look completely different for a lot of, you know, the size and scale of a lot of organizations. But I guess the premise will always be the same, is that you want to access that talent when you need it.
So it could be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet or candidates in my ATS and keep in touch with them, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I'm not right now, my talent pool function isn't the way that I'd like it to be, but I've got folders that I can use that, you know, for me right now, I can go back to and I can refamiliarize myself with those candidates. So yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles.
Great. So let's wrap. We packed a lot into this session. The three things that I learned, the three key themes, which I'll replay and tell me if I missed anything. The first is succession planning, but really let's call it workforce planning. So understanding where are we headed as a company, what do we need in the company, what have we got today, where are the gaps? That's kind of the first thing. Otherwise, you're just kind of being reactive and transactional. Second thing is, okay, how do we fill those gaps? Buy versus build. Do we want to go to market? Do we have capability inside the company? Do we want to develop? Do we want to bring people in with potential and then develop them? So that's kind of getting into the sort of strategy around that. And then the third thing is the sort of overarching theme that I've taken away from what you've said is the kind of relationship building rather than transactional. So whether it's silver medalists, whether it's people we proactively reached out to who haven't necessarily applied for a job with us, we want it, you know, as soon as it feels transactional, it's sort of a slippery slope. We want it to be a relationship. We want to show people the opportunity about, you know, the company, and you said a career path, not a job. And we don't have to have all the bells and whistles to build relationships. We should just build relationships, and then the fancy tech can sort of help us from there.
Yeah.
What have I missed?
I think that's it. I think you've summarized it well.
Okay, good. So hopefully the people listening in have taken something away, and really what we're aiming for is kind of like one thing that you can take away that you can do differently or just think about that stimulates the thinking. Kate, it's been great to have you. Got a wealth of knowledge on this. This is not an easy topic. This is a topic that I think everyone's still figuring out, particularly now where the market's kind of really flipped on its head and seems a bit, to some people, insane, more sort of vacancies than humans on the planet. But you know, we're all in this trying to figure it out. So it's been great. Thanks so much. Thanks to everyone for listening in. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining another Vervoe webinar.
Thank you.